All right, so a gram of the artificial sweetener aspartame is much sweeter than a gram of sugar. Soft drinks that are sweetened with sugar are, of course, sweet. So those sweetened with aspartame must be even sweeter. Okay, thus people who regularly drink soft drinks sweetened with aspartame will develop a preference for extremely sweet products. All right, so what is our conclusion here? Brittany?
That people who regularly drink soft drinks with aspartame will develop a preference for sweet products.
All right, so do you like this?
No.
Okay, why not?
Because it's saying that they're adding the same amount of sugar, like it's like a 1-to-1 ratio. Like they're saying that like however much sugar you add, you're also going to add the exact same amount of aspartame and make it even sweeter. But it's not like a 1-to-1.
We don't, yeah, they're assuming that it is 1-to-1 though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're saying, yeah, so we know that a gram of aspartame is sweeter than a gram of sugar. So how do we know that those that are sweetened with aspartame, like we don't just include less aspartame in it?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay, cool. And this extremely, I was like, well, how do we know? Yeah, anyways, cool. All right, so let's go ahead and start with A. So people sometimes develop a preference for foods they initially dislike. So if you dislike a new food, then you will eventually develop a preference. Yeah, no, because we're not comparing not liking something to liking it. What would have to be going on in our argument for A to be true?
Would they have to like the aspartame products more?
Kind of. What would they have had? What would have to be true about the aspartame previously? So if we're saying people sometimes develop a preference for foods that they initially dislike. So what would we have to say?
They would have had to initially dislike it, right?
Aspartame, right? So we could say people sometimes develop a preference for a sweeter food that they initially dislike. So if you dislike aspartame, then you will eventually develop a stronger preference for it or something like that. All right, so B says most people own more books than TVs. Moreover, it takes longer to read a book than to watch an episode of a TV show. So most people must spend more time reading than they do watching TV. What's our conclusion here, Ashley?
The most people spend more time reading than they do watching TV.
Excellent. Automatically, do you like, well, first, what kind of flaw is going on here, Ashley?
I'm not sure.
Do you know, Brittany?
Sorry, I was just like trying to match things because this was the one that I picked.
Okay, so this is actually a really bad answer, which is okay. Like, so we're saying here that most people own more books than TV. So we're saying that you own more books than TV. So that must mean that you spend more time reading than watching TV. So we're comparing quantity to time. And we're also comparing one thing to the other, like one's more than the other. Do we ever say up above that people that develop like a stronger preference for aspartame over a gram of sugar? We don't have any relative statements in our conclusion. Do you see that?
Okay. Yeah. I'm there.
Awesome. All right. Kamani, go ahead and read C for us. I'll move it.
Joe's piggy bank has only pennies in it, and Maria's has only nickels. All right. It's comparing two things that are like the same but different. Nickels are worth much more than pennies. Okay. It therefore follows that there is more money in Maria's piggy bank than in Joe's. So I like how they compared like pennies, like one is more than the other, like pennies and nickels.
Yep.
And then it's saying that nickels are worth more than pennies, like they did that aspartame is much sweeter than sugar.
Yep.
And then it's saying that it follows that there's more money in Maria's because it's like more, like the aspartame is sweeter than in Joe's.
Excellent.
So I would go with C.
You just killed that.
Yeah, I like the comparison thing, but like, how do you know when to do it like that or when to like diagram it, like A to B, B to C, you know?
This one I didn't diagram originally because it didn't really make sense. Like I didn't even know how to diagram it other than I just kind of knew that we're comparing two things and assuming that because one is more than the other that it's always going to be more or something, like kind of was like my pre-phrase.
Okay.
Yeah, this one I just thought was perfect. All right, D says Stephanie likes hot summer weather much more than Catherine does. So even up to this point, I don't hate this one, right? Like I'm like, okay, we're comparing two things. Let's see where it goes. So the place where Stephanie grew up must have had more days of hot summer weather than the place where Catherine grew up. Yeah, there's like, this is just like, we're not like saying like we have more of this thing, so therefore it must always be more. So did anybody pick D?
I think I did, because I was stuck on the preference. You develop a likeness for this addition or something like that.
Okay, so we're saying that, okay, so ours says like because something has more of it, then it will develop more, where this one assumes like because I already have this, I must have had more of those things to start with.
So it's going backwards.
Yeah.
Oh.
So and what would our argument have to say in order for that to be true?
It would have to be flipped. So it would be like a person has a preference for extremely sweet products, therefore they prefer aspartame.
Yep. Excellent.
So I think what my problem was, I think I forgot the so is a conclusion indicator. So when I read that Stephanie likes hot summer weather more, I was like, oh, that's a conclusion.
Oh,
and then I thought, because I know sometimes they don't follow the same structure, so I thought it was just flipped around. I see now.
Yeah, our conclusions are switched. Awesome. And then E says G has a much shorter drive to work than A does. So, conclusion, G's estimate of the average commute for workers in the country as a whole is likely to be lower than Abdul's estimate. Like, no, like that's like people guessing. I thought that was like a really silly answer. And that's why our answer is C.